Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the District of Squamish special business meeting for Tuesday, July 26th. Hasqualawin, Quistulkmuk, Las Cahomish, Okameo. We are privileged today to be meeting on the traditional unceded territory of Squamish Nation. Who would like to put forward a motion to adopt our amended agenda? Moved by Councillor French, seconded by Councillor Stoner. Any opposed? Motion carries. We do have a public hearing this evening, so I will read our opening statement. This public hearing is being held pursuant to the Local Government Act requirements to allow the public to present and to provide submissions to council respecting the proposed bylaw, District of Squamish Official Community Plan Bylaw 2500-2017 Amendment Bylaw for the Accepted Regional Context Statement and Community Climate Action Plan Emissions Target number 2895-2022. Everyone present will be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard or provide a written submission. We want to ensure that no one is discouraged or prevented from making their views known, whether speaking in favor or against the proposed amendment. Please ensure that your remarks are relevant to the matters contained in the proposed bylaw. Please note that the public hearing is not an opportunity for members of the public to have their questions answered by staff or by council. Any questions or points of clarification can be directed to staff by contacting the planning department. Members of council may ask clarifying questions following presentations. Council is here to listen and will not debate the merits of the proposed bylaw with the public or each other during the public hearing. Please note that this public hearing is being recorded and web streamed live, and the recording will be posted to the district website. Media are often present at public hearings, and the public should feel free to advise the media if they don't want their picture taken. Up to and as part of this hearing, the public has had the opportunity to make submissions to council. If any submissions were received, they are available for review and comment and have been included as part of staff's report. Any submissions received after the agenda was published have been added to the electronic agenda and to the electronic public hearing package available on the district website. Any submissions made during the hearing can be reviewed during the hearing by viewing the electronic agenda. Submissions will be uploaded by staff as they are received. We are trying to make all of our hearings a safe place for everyone to voice their opinion without interference from others. Therefore, I ask that members of the public maintain order and quiet during the hearing. Please do not applaud or interrupt any speech or action of members of council or any other person addressing council. I'll now ask the planning department to outline what the bylaw is proposing.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Matt Gunn. I'm a planner with the District of Squamish, and with me is Jonas Velanishkas, Director of Community Planning. Tonight we're presenting OCP Amendment Bylaw 2895 for public hearing. OCP Amendment Bylaw 2895 has two parts. First, it replaces the regional context statement that addresses the updated Squamish-Willowa Regional District Regional Growth Strategy. Second, it updates the District of Squamish greenhouse gas emission targets in alignment with the latest values set by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. I will explain these two changes in the following slides. First, updating Squamish's GHG targets. Squamish Council declared a climate emergency in July of 2019, committing to creating a GHG reduction and implementation plan that aligns with the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change's targets for limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees as per its 2018 report. This means a 45% reduction by 2030 and net carbon neutral by 2050. The resultant Community Climate Action Plan was adopted by Council in 2020. On screen, you can see the old and new language for Objective 19.3A in the OCP. The new language proposed specifically links our target with the IPCC targets so that we don't have to amend the OCP anytime when values change. We have allowed a caveat to adopt more stringent science-based metrics if need be. This would likely only happen if the IPCC does not update its targets for a period of time. The second aspect of the bylaw is the regional growth strategy, regional context statement. And I'm going to begin by explaining a regional context statement with a 3-slide review of regional planning. Regional growth strategies are strategic plans that direct long-term growth for regional district and municipal official community plans. Municipalities located within a regional growth strategy must include a regional context statement in their official community plan. Regional context statements must identify the relationship between the OCP and the regional growth strategy content and how the OCP is to be made consistent with the regional growth strategy over time. Regional context statements and the rest of the official community plan must be consistent. A regional context statement must be accepted by the board of the regional district. As a summary, the District of Squamish adopted an OCP. The SLRD adopted a regional growth strategy or updated it. The District of Squamish must then write a regional context statement that is accepted by the SLRD and added to the OCP. The RCP must be consistent with our OCP policies, and the RCS must identify the relationship between the OCP and the RGS and identify how the OCP can be made consistent with the RGS over time. As a background to this document, or this bylaw, in October 2019, the SLRD board adopted an updated RGS. Significant review and update of existing goals and strategic directions was included. 2 new goals were added related to food systems and climate change. As per the Local Government Act, updated regional context statements must be submitted to the Regional District Board for acceptance within 2 years of adoption. Staff drafted an RCPS update. It identified that the district OCP policies are aligned with all goals and strategic directions within the RGS. In September of 2021, Council directed staff to submit the RCS to the SLRD. In October 2021, the SLRD board accepted the RCS, and the RCS must now be adopted in the OCP through the proposed bylaw 2895. The bylaw has been referred to the Squamish Nation, Tsleil-Waututh Nation, regional districts adjacent to the District of Squamish, neighboring municipalities, School District 48, and provincial and federal agencies. The limited number of responses that were received were generally supportive. One response from the Tsleil-Waututh Nation requested a change to recognize in the RCS their traditional territory within the District of Squamish. Given that the RCS reflects existing OCP plan policy, this input can be considered during a future update of the Squamish Official Community Plan bylaw. The district has followed the legislative process for the public hearing, and notices of the public hearing were included in the Squamish Chief in the July 14th and 21st editions. Subject to the public hearing, the staff recommendation is that Council could approve the following recommendation: that the bylaw be given 3rd reading and adopted. That is the end of our presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gunn. I'll just ask before I go to the public if council has any clarifying questions. Seeing none, I'll now ask the public to comment on the proposed bylaw, after which, sorry. I'll now ask the public to comment on the proposed bylaw amendment. For all speakers, when it's your turn to speak, if you're here in City Hall, just approach the podium and start your remarks by clearly stating your name and address. You will have 5 minutes to address council so that everyone has an opportunity to speak. If you're participating electronically via telephone or WebEx, there should be instructions posted on the screen for those that have logged in on their computer. Instructions are also on the district website. For electronic participants, you raise your hand by dialing *3 if you're on the phone, or on WebEx, you open up the participant panel and click on the hand icon. Please note there will be a moderator who will communicate with speakers participating electronically. When it's your turn to speak, you'll receive a voice prompt on the telephone or a dialog box on WebEx. Please remember to put your hand down after you have finished speaking, which again is *3 on the phone, or you just click on the hand icon again on WebEx. So I'll just see if there's anyone at Municipal Hall that wishes to speak. Just raise your hand, come forward, state your name and neighborhood for the record.
Spencer Fitchin, 2298 Greenwood Way in the Garibaldi Highlands. Speaking not to the RCS component, but to the component of the amendment that addresses climate change. I think this is very strong and well supported. At least I very strongly support this. The only thing that I may comment on is There's language to along the lines of encouraging the District of Squamish and others to pursue modes of energy that do not include fossil fuel and go to renewable energy sources. And I would recommend that if we could do more than encourage, that would be even more supportable. But being able to see something like this come through is very good, and I'm very happy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else at City Hall? Yep, come forward. Just your name and neighborhood.
Hi, Mayor and Council. My name is Jess Herman. I live in Hospital Hill. I just wanted to applaud staff and also council for bringing this forward. As someone who lives here and wants to continue living here, it's great to see this initiative being taken. One thing that I wanted to bring up was also biodiversity loss. The connection between biodiversity loss and climate change is now widely accepted. We can see it locally here with the hottest days on record also coinciding with some of the lowest tides and just cooking some of our intertidal habitats. I know that through polling that 3 out of 4 Canadians support Indigenous-led conservation efforts. I also know that the Environmental Society here is working on a wildlife connectivity study, and I would just like to see that that's included in some of our planning, especially on an OCP level. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no potential speakers left at City Hall, we'll just see if there's any electronic participants. Ms. Murray?
No speakers, Mayor Elliott.
Again, it's *3 on the telephone or raise your hand in the participant panel. All right. Not seeing any further hands at City Hall. Ms. Murray, you're not seeing any hands online? Okay. Council? Yep.
Just a clarifying question from staff. So presumably, as the IPCC science has gotten more painted a somewhat darker picture of what we need to do and what our outlook is. And so we need to do more than even when we pass the emergency resolution. So I'm just wondering if staff can speak to when we might update our CCAP and some of those other policies in light of this OCP change, if it is supported.
Through the chair, I believe, and I'm a little outside my area expertise, but I believe our current program is implementing our existing CCAP, which is a fairly recent document, and I think still has a significant relevance to the challenges we're facing. I suspect that efforts to update the CCAP might be relevant once a bulk of the actions within the CCAP have been implemented and council provides direction for staff to undertake that. I might pass it off to
Mr. Gunn, I actually believe it's scheduled for 2023. We should see it in the budget, and if you don't, you can put forward a motion at that time. Any other questions? All right. If there are no further speakers, now that I've heard from everyone, it's a requirement that I ask 3 times if there's anyone else who wishes to speak before we can close the public hearing. So for a first time, is there anyone else who wants to speak or make a submission? For a second time, is there anyone else who wants to speak or make a submission? Don't be shy online. For a third and final time, is there anyone else who wants to speak or make a submission? All right, please note that council members are not permitted to receive any further submissions or hear either a proponent or opponent to an application once the public hearing has been concluded. This means that we can't speak to people in the community or receive emails or phone calls on any of the bylaws until a decision on the bylaw has been made. Any and all communication must be channeled to staff from this point forward. If there are no further speakers, I declare the hearing closed. Thank you very much for participating this evening. So we're on to item 4A1, which is to contemplate third reading of the District of Squamish Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw 2895, 2022, which we just had the public hearing for. Councillor Stoner, you're moving that, seconded by Councillor Herford. Any comments? Go ahead, Councillor Stoner.
Thank you through the chair. Thanks to staff for the presentation during the public hearing. I think the component around the accepted regional context statement is a no-brainer. That's very administrative in nature, and appreciate Mr. Gunn's ability to provide clear context of the various planning documents and how they interlay with one another. But it is really important that regional context statement helps align the regional growth strategy with our official community plan, and knowing that there's some alignment there between what we're doing in Squamish and more broadly through the Squamish-Willett Regional District. So I'm happy to see that. And then the Community Climate Action Plan emissions target component, I think, is also really important, just to backstop knowing that we're following the most stringent science-based metrics and in setting the goals that we have for our community. And so appreciate the speakers this evening and looking to try and broaden that and strengthen the language. I think this is one piece of the broader policy tools that we have, and will help really define kind of that high-end target that we're setting and how we can implement those other tools within the OCP to achieve this goal. But really knowing that this goal of limiting warming to 1.5 is the most critical component, and there's different ways that we can get there. And so let's work as hard as we can to make sure that we get there, if not further. Thank you.
Councillor Herford.
Thank you. I'm excited to see this piece of work move forward. I think it's completely appropriate to take this step as far as the emission targets go, and have them tied to the latest science. The science in this area continues to be updated, and our understanding is growing. And as action or inaction is taken, it affects what needs to be done to achieve these goals. So I think building this into the OCP is the strongest position to put it, and is vital to our success, and as a community, but as a species. So it's very important work. I also like the fact that this doesn't need to, as much as I'm sure there'll be opportunities to improve upon the language here, I appreciate how this sets us up to always have the most current science be applicable to our policies going forward, similarly to maybe a financial policy that recognizes inflation as part of it. So I think this is crucial. And the language around urge or encourage that's included in many of these sort of subsequent pieces, for the public, I think exists because we have limits to what we can mandate or demand of in certain situations. And I know this council's and staff have been creative in ways in finding where that leverage exists to elevate the language from that point effectively. But urge and encourage is where we land sometimes, just in the practical sense at this point. So thank you so much for everyone's work to get us to this point. I think this is very important. Thank you.
Councillor Pettengill.
Thank you. Strongly support this, and I'm sure my colleagues will be sick and tired of some of what I have to say, but I believe some different people are watching tonight, so I just wanted to share a few things. In terms of the regional growth strategy alignment, I think it's strong, and I've been pleased to see how we push the regional district pushes us, and there's a real sort of positive competition, I think, to move us all in the right direction. And I think that is, you can see that in the table of concordance. I think the IPCC science is an important, and floating with that, the best science is important to do. I do have some concern about whether or not we're doing enough to live up to those words. I would acknowledge, and I think I've praised our staff and our council for being a lot further than other communities. And so by that measurement, I think we're doing very well and setting a very good example. But when I measure us against what is required for survival, I don't think we're doing enough. And I don't think it saves us the fact that we're still ahead of other people, because I think we all really need to go a lot further, a lot faster if we're going to make it through this. And, we talk about sometimes about inspiring the youth, and the youth will bring the change we need to see and so on and so forth. But we don't really have the time, unfortunately, to wait for the youth to come along and do a better job. And so I think the youth are expecting us to fight as hard as we can every chance we get right now for their survival. And so I take that to heart, and that's why I push hard sometimes, because I feel an immense sense of responsibility to do this. And I think, whether it is how we handle discretionary actions with fossil fuel projects, how we think about energy in our own buildings, how hard we push for no gas covenants in permits and rezonings and so on. I think all that speaks to how true we are to our words in this policy, which I think is very important. And I think that ties into the cynicism and do people believe us as politicians when we say we'll take on this important task? And this is our guide stone. So again, very, very pleased to have this policy in here. And I hope that for everyone that is voting for it, we will then follow through with all the actions that the IPCC says we need to take, which includes no new fossil infrastructure and moving forward quickly and aggressively for our survival and well-being. Thank you.
I think the important factor for me is that now if a future council wants to take this language out of the OCP, it's a public process. Before, this was just a strategic plan initiative from this council. And now we've made it part of our official community plan. And I would expect that our community would come out very strongly if future council decided to back us away from meeting our commitments around climate action. So happy that this is going to be put in place before I leave office. I'll call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. We actually can now adopt this bylaw on the same evening. And so under item 4B1, motion to adopt bylaw 2895-2022. Moved by Councillor Herford, second by Councillor French. Any opposed? Motion carries. We can adopt District of Squamish Housing Agreement bylaw for 39541 Queensway, number 2806-2021 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Ray, second by Councillor Herford. Any comments? Any opposed? Motion carries. We're on to item 5, staff reports. Thank you, Mr. Gunn. So we are on to Squamish Transit Maintenance Facility Memorandum of Understanding. And I'll turn it over to you, Ms. Gunn, to introduce the topic.
Great, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Dora Gunn, a transportation planner with the District of Squamish. I'm just going to share my screen here and try and get my presentation set up, and then we'll get going. Get this right. Apologies. Now I've lost my mute button. We're getting there. All right. Are you seeing my presentation?
Yes, we are.
Fantastic. Thank you. Today I'll be providing an overview of the proposed transit maintenance facility memorandum of understanding between the district and BC Transit. I will be providing the presentation, but we also have 2 BC Transit staff available to answer questions. James Wadsworth, Project Development Manager, and Rob Ringma, Senior Manager of Government Relations. So to start us off, some background information about the maintenance facility. I think Council is all aware that the current facility is at capacity. There is the possibility for storing an additional 3 vehicles off-site, and BC Transit continues to look for more space. I think in my report, I mentioned space for 3 or 4 vehicles. My apologies for that. There's been some conflicting information about the number of spaces, but 3 is the latest update. So council endorsed the scope of a new facility on June 8th, 2021, and recommended considering it in the budget process in September 2021. Annual fees for the facility were approved in the last year of the 5-year financial plan, so 2026. That was approved in December of 2021. Are you seeing do you see the screen, the WebEx box as well, or do you just see my presentation?
Just your presentation. It looks good.
Fantastic. Thank you. Great. Thank you. So the purpose of the MOU is for the district and BC Transit to agree to pre-implementation costs that are required to move the project forward, as well as the general scope of the project. It will enable BC Transit to confirm project characteristics, advance the design, and develop a Class B cost estimate. The MOU and pre-implementation funds enable those activities to proceed. BC Transit will develop their own business case and apply for federal funding on behalf of both parties. The MOU is non-binding for the project overall, and details will be confirmed in a future project agreement if the grant application is successful. So an overview of the content of the MOU, BC Transit's estimated that $400,000 will be needed for pre-implementation work. That will be cost shared along the traditional formulas, which include a mix of both conventional and custom transit, which results in a cost share percentage of 49.9% for BC Transit and 50.01% for the district. The MOU includes information about the size of the facility based on the Morrison Hershfield scoping work in 2021, which includes space for regional transit and battery electric charging infrastructure. BC Transit has to meet the provincial requirement of LEED Gold for the facility. BC Transit wasn't ready to commit to the low carbon energy sources in the MOU, but they are open to future discussions on this topic. LEED Gold does provide credits for the use of low carbon energy, so it's one way that you can meet your LEED Gold requirements. So the way the project is proposed to be structured, BC Transit will provide the funds up front for the whole project and owns the capital assets unless otherwise agreed to. Details related to ownership and fee types and amounts will be finalized in the project agreement, so they're not required for this MOU. The district will begin paying our portion of the fees on opening day. BC Transit will manage the project, but will be guided by a working group that will include district staff, that will include the design phases, so the way the building is oriented and designed. The scope of the project can be reduced prior to the project agreement. So if regional transit didn't go ahead, the facility could be resized to accommodate local transit only. All maintenance, repair, and operating costs for the facility will be cost shared along traditional formulas. And if regional transit is included, they'll pay their portion of that also. Okay, moving on to budget implications. Signing this MOU only commits the district to the pre-implementation funding, so up to $200,000 for our portion, which would be included in the annual fees starting on opening day. The budget for the overall project won't be confirmed until the project agreement is signed. An estimated $0.53 million annually is included in the 2022-25 5-year financial plan, and no changes are proposed to that at this time. The current budgeted amount does not break out a regional transit portion. The table shown on the slide provides a high-level estimate of the cost breakdown between the parties with and without regional transit. There's still a lot of unknowns at this point, so it really is just very much an estimate. It assumes the federal grant still providing the 40% of construction costs. And this works out that the district share is 22% if regional transit is included and 32% if not. But of course, the scale of the facility would be smaller without regional transit. So the actual cost, it's hard to say how that would work out, but it's different. And then just to compare the cost of the facility versus other transit operating costs, I've created this table. The annual increase is shown in the first of the financial columns, and then the second column shows the total annual cost. So the first 2 lines are from our annual operating agreements. So for 2022-23, we have the $1.57 million amount. This is followed by the amounts that were included in the current 3-year expansion MOU, so the 1.26 million increase. And then we have the new maintenance facility coming online in 2026-27, so an additional $500,000. And then finally, the last of the Transit Future Action Plan expansions after that. Moving on to next steps. If council supports the MOU, BC Transit will begin the pre-implementation work, do their business case and the federal grant application by 2024. If the grant application is successful, staff will return to council with a draft project agreement. A decision on regional transit will also be required ahead of the project agreement. That's it for my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gunn. Any questions, council? Councilor Pettengill.
So I just want to make sure I understand that I'm remembering things correctly. So I understand typically for transit, there's a cost share between the municipality and the province, but normally the cost share doesn't cover facilities, and that's just sort of somehow borne by the province up until now. And maybe that's generally changing, or this is a more of a special case or first time because there's all this federal money on the table and we're trying to take advantage of that. Can you just sort of remind me of what the quote unquote normal situation is and how this might differ?
I might turn that question over to one of our BC Transit staff. I'm not sure whether Mr. Wadsworth or Mr. Ringma would be better to answer that. Perhaps one of you could chime in there.
Hello, through the chair, I could start and then Rob could follow up. So right now, your pair.
Could you just introduce yourself?
Sorry, hello, I'm James Wadsworth. I'm the manager of project development at BC Transit. And so right now, facility costs are paid through the annual operating agreement and cost shared there. There's it's part of the cost of providing service with the third-party operator. So that, you know, if we're building a new facility, it becomes a capital project and it's a separate line item.
Yes, and if I could just add, Rob Ringma, I'm the Senior Manager of Government Relations for BC Transit. So through the chair, Councillor Pettengill, yes, so the current facility is owned by PWT, so they actually charge BC Transit a lease fee through our agreement with them, which then, as James just alluded to, flows through to BC Transit and the district through your AOA at our current cost share ratio. So that just switches to then us owning the asset.
Councillor Herford.
Thank you. LEED Gold is called out here, and in our work on similar buildings as a council, whether it be a fire hall or public works, buildings that can accept a bus like this with the big roll-up doors have a hard time. So far, I've had a hard time achieving that. Is this something that BC Transit uses across their or is requiring across their whole network, or is this a standalone? And I'm just curious what that piece, because it seemed to be, as much as I appreciate the concepts, it seemed to be a hard one to achieve in buildings such as the one that's being contemplated here.
I'll start to take a shot at that. So through the chair, the Clean BC program, through that we have to develop our facilities going forward to be designed to a LEED Gold standard and also step 3 of the BC building code. So yes, a roll-up door is a challenge, but I think I'm not an expert in this area, but there are design ways to mitigate that. And we're having to do this across the province.
Ms. Gunn, you mentioned through the MOU that it'll be cost shared at our usual amount, which then one of the terms in the agreement says that BC Transit will own the facility, except we've paid for more of it. So don't we own the facility, and BC Transit can then negotiate with us if they would like to get it back?
So technically, we haven't spent more on it than them. I'm not going to try and get my slides back up again because that's challenging, although I could if needed. But just the way the funding formula works out between construction and land and all the percentages, we actually aren't spending more than BC Transit. So that's part of the answer. The second part is that who owns the facility exactly and how the fees work hasn't yet been determined. And we don't have to have that answer for the MOU in order to proceed at this point, but we absolutely have to have it for the legally binding project agreement. Having said all that, if BC Transit staff want to chime in on that one.
Yes, so through the chair, I think the first thing you may have seen is right now we're cost sharing the study at the traditional rate, which is a blended rate between the custom and conventional transit. So that's where you may have seen the 50-50. As we, in terms of funding for these projects, for property, it's the traditional funding rate, so at 50-50, and for the facility build, we're moving projects forward where we're trying to get provincial and federal funding and get the local government share of the building construction down to 20%. So I think the slides presented show those cost sharing rates blended together. And for us to make these investments with battery electric bus, we're avoiding scenarios where we're leasing a facility or do not have control over it because of the level of investment that we're making to advance battery electric bus and build a facility. We need to have some control over the land. We've had some other communities where long ago decisions were made where it's become a challenge now to make investments in the facility because we don't have that control over the facility. It makes it harder to roll out things like battery electric bus.
Thank you. Ms. Gunn, are the land costs included in that operating number?
Yes, the percentages include the land costs. Actually, all the numbers include the land costs.
So given that we're not applying for the whatever ISIP version 2 will be till 2024, and there is a possibility that land costs will be included in that, if they are, we would expect to see that number decline, correct?
That is
And
correct.
do you know by approximately how much?
I don't know that at this time. A significant amount.
All right. Councillor Stoner.
Thank you. Through the chair, this might be a question for Ms. Boxrood. I'm just curious, as we integrate this into our budget, how will it impact our borrowing capacity, if at all, especially if in the MOU it states that it'll be an owned asset by BC Transit and it's really just an operating cost? Does that go against our borrowing capacity, or is that really just integrated into our operating budget?
Thank you for that question through the chair. It really depends on how the agreement is designed. So if it goes, the agreement is designed in a way that by accounting standards appears to be like a capital lease, then it goes against our borrowing. If it's designed in a way that it does not, and it's under an operating lease, and there's a lot of nuances that are built into that, then it doesn't go against our borrowing capacity.
Thank you for that clarification.
All right. Any other questions? The motion in front of us is to authorize the mayor and corporate officer to execute the MOU for the transit maintenance facility with BC Transit, significantly in the form attached to the report that we've received this evening. So moved by Councillor Stoner. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Anderson. Any further comments? Councillor Stoner.
Just briefly, I think thanks to BC Transit and to staff for the work on this. I think it is important work to move forward. We're not able to expand our transit system without increased space to be able to store and maintain buses. So I think that this is very important forward-looking work. I think the challenge is obviously the cost associated and how we're going to manage that with respect to the other pressures on our budgets. And so I'm really keeping my fingers and my toes crossed that this new version of the ISIP grant will include land costs to help try and mitigate some of that. If not, then we'll have to come back to the drawing board, I think, a little bit. But I think moving this forward as an MOU at this point is well worthwhile. So thanks.
Councillor Anderson?
Yes, speaking in favor of the recommendation, I think this is a thoroughly considered memorandum of understanding with the reference to contingencies and full consideration of also due diligence studies. Thank you.
Councillor Herford?
Thank you. I'm in support of this direction. I think this is already proving to be a limiting factor to how fast we can move with our transit expansion. I have concerns around the operational or capital lease piece. I think is going to be important to really flush out, and I'm hoping that we can get to that operational lease configuration to help with the various pressures that we do have as a community. And yeah, so but I think we'll set out to do that work now, and we'll see where we land. Thank you.
Councillor Pettengill?
Yeah, I'll be supporting this as well. I appreciate the work. I think there is some more things to look at in the details of the lease, but given the OCP amendment we just passed, we need to be taking these opportunities. And we had a presentation earlier today about really the success, I think, in our transit network. So we do need to be ready to expand that in a way that deals with the climate emergency before us. And so I'm glad to see us moving forward in that. Thank you.
This is a good first step and gives us some time before the next ISIP grant applications, which hopefully, as my colleagues say, include land costs. I think when we get to the project agreement phase, I do think that staff should be advocating for our community climate action plan policies, which require low carbon energy sources. I also think that now that BC Transit is a member of the BC Social Procurement Initiative, that the procurement for this project should reflect the procurement policy and values of the District of Squamish, as well as those of BC Transit. I think there's good alignment there. And of course, I think we need to be creative when we look at the agreement we sign so that this is not a capital lease. I think there's a partnership agreement to be created here, or an operating lease agreement if we can get it there. There's a lot of really important infrastructure projects that are weighing on our budget and our borrowing capacity, and the transit maintenance facility is essential, but probably not more popular than redoing our recreation center. So that would be a hard sell for any council. So I think we have to be creative when we get to this next stage of how we structure the payments, and also make sure that project agreement does reflect the values of both parties. So with that, I'll call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Second time around, BC Transit folks, and thanks, Ms. Gunn.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks.
All right, we're on to item 5.2, the Capilano Campus Proposal Letter of Support. And I believe Ms. Mulligan is joining us.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Catherine Mulligan, and I'm the Economic Development Officer for the District of Squamish. I do not have a presentation for this evening, and I will just quickly share that the Capilano University is seeking to establish a campus on oceanfront lands within the District of Squamish, and has asked for a letter of support as they are going to submit their proposal to the province of BC for consideration in early September of this year. Therefore, the letter is just to support the establishment of the campus and the FTE or number of seats that would be proposed. And the letter has been attached to the memo.
Thank you, Ms. Mulligan. Council, any questions? Councillor Pettengill? Oh, okay. Any questions? Go ahead, Councillor Anderson.
Ms. Mulligan, during the, I think, well-received event at the library, I think it's just a week and a half ago with the Capilano University team and select people from the community, one of the items that came up was, if you like, the ambition level with the building, whether an additional floor or additional floor space could be considered. And the answer was from the Capilano University team, well, it comes down to the provincial government. Is there an opportunity for advocacy on this point with the province, either via this letter or otherwise, and in fact, there is reference to an overview of associated construction costs that will be part of the proposal submitted to the province by Capilano University in September. Would we be advised to help the university's cause in getting that extra floor space for Squamish, either in this letter or in other advocacy opportunities?
Thank you for your question. Yes, I think there is a role for the district to play in terms of advocacy for the campus. UBCM will prove an opportune time to provide feedback in terms of what the campus could provide our local community. And I know that there was lots of discussion during the event, which occurred regarding innovation space for the top floor, which is an identified need for our economic development strategy. And it's what we've been hearing from our local business community. So absolutely, there is a role to play. I'm hesitant to incorporate it in the letter because we have not seen what the proposal is that is being submitted to to the province by Capilano University. We don't have the full details. We did share this letter with Capilano University staff prior to submitting it to you for consideration. And so they were very keen on the letter and its contents, and in supporting the general nature of the campus and how it aligns well with our sector aspirations. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mulligan. Well, then we'll look forward to our meetings with the Ministry of Advanced Education in September. Thank you.
Councillor Stoner.
Thank you. Through the chair, I appreciate your comments that you just made to Councillor Anderson. I had another point that I was also going to raise in terms of whether it's best included in this letter or another point of advocacy in terms of associated housing with the project. And that was part of the conversation that occurred during that meeting with 400 proposed FTEs and the number of students, but no necessarily. There are other conversations going on around housing, and I know it involves different ministries at the province. And so maybe this isn't the right letter, but I am just concerned about moving this level of support forward without flagging that exceptional challenge around housing that we have in our community. And so I'm wondering if you can speak to that a little bit, Ms. Mulligan, if that's well suited in this letter, or if we also just kind of take that away and move it forward in another conversation.
Thank you for the question. I do think that we could softly introduce the concept of affordable housing and the importance that affordable housing has on our community, and therefore student housing being a critical component of any future campus development. However, you are correct in saying that they are two separate items in terms of the proposal. The proposal will not include any information regarding housing, student housing. This proposal will be providing an academic plan and an operational plan for the campus in September. And the housing at this point, from my understanding, is still in discussion and in development in terms of how the housing will be established. And there is a plan for it, but it will not be part of this proposal to the province. Thank you.
Not seeing any further hands. Ms. Mulligan, I know that you drafted this draft, and just to note, there's a typo in the last paragraph. We say of local the local. So
thank you very much for pointing that out.
Just want to catch that. All right. Someone put forward the motion to provide a letter of support to the Capilano University. Moved by Councillor Anderson, second by Councillor Herford. Any further comments? Councillor Petgill.
Yeah, just really excited by this. The discussion we had with the Capilano University folks was excellent. The receptiveness to working with the community in terms of the space and the programming, making sure that both integrate well and serve our community was really great to see. It wasn't just like, here's how this school will benefit you. It's like, how do we shape this, all parts of it, to make it work for the community? And I know there's some cross-pollination with our economic development team, and would just say that I hope that that level of interaction and collaboration continues, because it was really quite exciting, and I look forward to seeing this move forward.
Councillor Anderson.
Mayor Elliott, I just wanted to take the opportunity to express kudos to our team, our Economic Development Department in this initiative. We met with the Capilano University folks a week and a half ago, and they've got all kinds of things going on, and they're represented also by consultants. But in our pitch, our description of our circumstances and our need, we were very clear and coherent, and this is reflected, or will be reflected, hopefully, in the province's reception of the Capilano University proposal.
Councillor Herford.
Thank you. I'm excited about the prospect of Capilano University returning to Squamish. They've been at other times they've had a larger presence here, and it's been had a positive impact. So I hope they're successful in this endeavor. And I was very impressed with the presentation and their willingness to actually listen to the feedback and on the spot actively figure out ways to incorporate that feedback from the community into this project. So yeah, happy to support this letter going out, and I look forward to seeing where it goes.
You guys love meetings. Councillor French, go ahead.
I'll be concise. Where we're at with this letter has me thinking back to the days of Linda Carney pushing very hard to cause the creation of the former Capilano building by Howsound Secondary School. So I'm supporting this recommendation in the loving memory of Linda Carney.
Now I'll call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Mulligan.
Thank you, Council.
See you in September. Council, we don't usually do this, but at 6:20, I got a letter, an email requesting a letter of support from the North Shore Restorative Justice Group, who we provided a letter of support for last year. And of course, their grant deadline is August 9th. So this is our last meeting. So I'd like to put a motion on the floor to amend the agenda to add a late item of correspondence under item 7. Moved by Councillor Stoner, seconded by Councillor French. And I've got it here, so I'll just pass it out so that you have it. I think I'll call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, so we're on to item 6A, correspondence to receive for information that the letter from Paul Morris, terminal manager at Squamish Terminals, regarding the bridge work impact be received. Moved by Councillor Stoner, seconded by Councillor Anderson. Any opposed? Motion carries. That the thank you note from M. Hearn for the scholarship be received by Councillor Herford, seconded by Councillor Stoner. Any opposed? Motion carries. 6B1, correspondence referred to staff that. Oh, sorry. There we go. There's 2 letters there that council received the above correspondence for information. Moved by Councillor Herford, seconded by Councillor French. Any opposed? Motion carries. Under item 7, correspondence action requested that the correspondence received from Jay Sissons regarding Blue Jay Way Park concerns be referred to the Director of Public Works for follow-up and response. Moved by Councillor Race, seconded by Councillor Herford. Any opposed? Motion carries. We received a letter from C. de Greer about the Squamish Hospital. This is for council's consideration. To receive or response? Move receipt by Councillor Race. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor French. Any opposed? Motion carries. I actually think Emily Sturdy's letter was very well written. That 7.3, this is a letter of support request from Squamish Wind Sports that council provide a letter of support to this organization for their BC Community Gaming Grant application. Moved by Councillor French, seconded by Councillor Pettengill. Any opposed? Motion carries. And finally, 7.4, that council provide a letter of support to the North Shore Restorative Justice Group for their community gaming grant application. Moved by Councillor Stoner, seconded by Councillor Race. Any opposed? Motion carries. Motion to terminate, Councillor Stoner, seconded by Councillor Herford. Any opposed? Motion carries. And council, we still need to finish up our special meeting in the close, so you can move to the other link and we'll reconvene in about 15 minutes.